Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn of the great strategy games. And today we are going to continue on with our Let's Play of Gary Grigsby's War in the Pacific Admiral's Edition. And what a Let's Play it's been! We are now through 16 episodes, and this will be the 17th. And today we go into the unknown lands of the off-map bases. Now, one of the challenges when you make a Let's Play or tutorial is you have all varying degrees of experience, right? You have some people that want to listen to them because they love the game and they've been playing it for a very long time and they've been playing board games like this game for a very long time. And then you have other people who maybe have only played, Panzer core games or something, and they want to go on to something more advanced and a little meatier, and so now they're playing. And then you have everything in between, right? And so you have to try to get a little bit to all of those audiences. So I don't want to bore people that are experienced with these type of games by, droning on forever about this. But for the newer people, I do want to kind of mention where do off-map bases come from? Why do they exist? Uh, what are they, essentially? Well, way back in the day, and many of you, I hope anyway, are too young to remember this, but way back in the day, you used to take maps that looked like this, well, probably not nearly as good as this map, and you used to spread it all over your parents or your grandparents or your friends' parents' basement or out in their garage over folding tables. And then you had the little counters you would punch out, and you would move those counters around, much like this game, War in the Pacific. It's one of the reasons I love this game so much. It reminds me of my youth all those years ago. Well, at some point, those games just got massive, or some of them were so big, you had 5 or 6 maps that all interconnected. It became like a strange game of Tetris. And someone developed the off-map base or the box, for lack of a better term. And that is what we see here with Abaddon and Aden and the other ones spread across the edges of the map. Now it's called off map because even though you can see it and you say, hey, that's not off the map, it's on the map. I can see it. Well, if you think of the map kind of stopping right here, it is off the map. And all it is instead of the game showing all of the hexes between Karachi and Abaddon, they've just shortened that. And the reason that they have is there's not going to be any action, quote unquote action, between Abaddon and Karachi. The only thing that will be happening is task forces will sail back and forth. Okay, but the Japanese are not going to be operating over here. There's not going to be, a surface combat happening over here in these areas from here to here. It's just too far away. It's too distant. It didn't happen historically. Now, if this were a world at war game and not just War in the Pacific, you may have to model some of these things and we would have to have these hexes, but these hexes just aren't necessary. And so instead of having another 50 or 60 hexes and making this map even further to scroll across, they just said, okay, we're going to set up this box, put Abaddon, the base of Abaddon here, because it is important to the Pacific War effort, so we want to model it. But instead of it, you seeing it go through every hex, what happens is these task forces or, troops show up here too. I mean, obviously the British Empire went all over the planet. The sun never sets upon the British Empire. Well, it does now, but it didn't in 1941. And so you've got British bases at all these places, and you will have fuel there, supply there, ships will show up there, troops, planes, all of that happens. But the way it's modeled is they the game will just take these task forces, let's say, and whatever you load onto them, and it will sit at this box for a prescribed number of days. Then it will come out. Now, I jokingly call these the penalty boxes like hockey, the penalty box. There, it's not a penalty though. This is just an operation of the game. If they did model all the hexes, let's say it would take 21 days. I'm totally making this up, but let's say it would take 21 days to get to Karachi. Okay, what'll happen in the game is it'll sit here for 4 or 5 days or 7 days maybe. Then it'll sit down here for a certain number of days, and then it'll exit onto the map. Now, the main thing to keep in mind about this is it can exit anywhere. This is all part of the box, this black up here. This is not just, artwork or showing you, oh, this is the edge of the map. This is actually part of that holding box. And so if the game will still route the most efficient place for the task force to go. And so if it comes down the pipe here, the dirty pipe it looks like, and it comes down here, and then the game decides most efficiently it would exit the box here, then you'll see the task force come out here. And let's go look at that. Cape Town's a great place to look at that because Cape Town obviously all the way on the southern tip of Africa. Now let's look at this transport task force. Okay, this is actually an interesting one. But we're not going to talk about it for it being interesting at this moment. We're going to click on that and look at the routing. Now you may say, well, where is it? We obviously haven't given it an order. Well, we have. We've told it to go to North Mail up in the Maldives. Okay, well, where it, and now you see it. So the computer has decided that the most efficient route is for this task force to exit and exit the holding box and enter onto the map right here. Now where this really becomes confusing, I find, for some new players of the game for this Cape Town to Perth run, because you click on, oh, let's find the Perth one. There's Perth. Okay. So we've given it the order, go to Perth from Cape Town. Okay, great. So you're like, well, what? Where is this thing? It is all the way down here. And so because it's exiting here, of course, it takes longer to get from here up to here. It doesn't really go up to here. It really goes from here to here, but it takes longer to get down here where the game thinks its best routing is. Um, and so it's going to sit in this holding box longer and then emerge out down here. So don't lose track of these things. I mean, this holding box goes all the way down here to, south of Tasmania. And so if you're sending something, let's say from Cape Town to the Panama Canal, it may exit the box all the way down here. This is still part of that holding box, and depending on where it's going, it will have to sit there for a certain amount of time that the game determines based on how many hexes, if all of the hexes were mapped out, that it would actually take. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense to someone, just leave me a comment down here. I'm happy to talk about it a little bit. But the idea is essentially, let's just make the map a little smaller by not completely modeling out places that don't need to be modeled out because nothing's going to be happening there other than task forces moving from A to B. Okay, that's the idea. Um, Now let's talk about, I'm just going to start up here at the top as we talk about setting these up. Let's go up here to Abaddon and Aden. Now Abaddon and Aden, where are they? You could of course Google them and look at the map, but at this point I love to draw and I'm terrible at it, which makes it even better. But let's think about the, I guess it's a isthmus, a peninsula of Saudi Arabia. Kind of comes down in a boot like that and up here. Oh, okay, that's awful. Um, but it is what it is. Okay, and then you have more land here. Boy, I don't want this to go much further. It might get kind of naughty. Um, Abaddon. Okay, Abaddon is a port that is on the southern edge of what is Iran, and it was Iran back then. The British controlled Iran, and so here is Iraq here, and here is Iran. This is kind of where their border goes right here, and Abadan comes out here straight down the Persian Gulf. So it's the Persian Gulf, and as it comes out here, then all of a sudden it would turn and go to Karachi. So this is just kind of modeling. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get that off here. This is just modeling. You can see here, this is the Persian Gulf. So it's going to come down the Persian Gulf, take a left-hand turn to the east, and come to Karachi. Now, Aden, where is Aden? Well, okay, I'll just try this one more time. There's the boot, and up here, this is the Saudi Arabia. This is the Red Sea. So, like, this would be Egypt. This is the Red Sea. This is Saudi Arabia. Here is Yemen, okay? And Aden is a port on the southern portion of Yemen down here, okay? Now, this becomes important because, okay, this is the Red Sea. This is the Suez Canal. All right. So anyway, it would come out of Yemen and then come over here to Karachi. So this is a little further west than Abadan because this is where Aden is, and this, approximately is where Abadan is when you're looking at the Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, this peninsula out here. Okay, I'm done drawing, at least for this episode. But the point here is, and the reason I bring this up, is because you heard me mention the Suez Canal. Well, if you're kind of mapping this out in your brain, the Red Sea comes down here and kind of, we get around the corner here into the Arabian Sea, and Aden is down on the southern end of it here. But the Red Sea, comes up here north and goes to the Suez Canal. Well, as you may know, if you're a student of World War II or you have studied the Mediterranean portion of that war, the Germans and the Italians, early on in the war at least, put up quite a fight in the Mediterranean. There was Malta, in Sicily, North Africa. There was quite a fight between the Germans, the Italians, and the Allies in the Mediterranean. And so the Suez Canal is really closed. Okay, if you think about Rommel operating against the Allies, Rommel was in Egypt and controlled Egypt for quite a period of time, okay? And so the Germans, the Nazis controlled the Suez Canal. And so the British had a very hard time getting things down into the Red Sea and over this way. And you see this dotted line? This Mediterranean shipping lane is closed. It's closed at the start of the game, and it only opens May 14th, 1943. Now, I've never looked exactly why that's May 14th. I assume boy, I don't want to take a wild guess, but that's maybe around the time that the British and the Americans took back. It's probably when they took back the Suez Canal, to be quite honest. I'm not exactly sure if that's the exact date. Let's just put it this way. Shipping is allowed to move back through the Suez Canal May 14th, 1943 in this game. Okay, I assume that's when the Allies took it back or got it repaired, because I'd be shocked if the Germans didn't try to blow it. But I don't know. I'll have to look that up now. I'm actually curious. That's why I like playing games like this. But anyway, on May 14th, 1943, this will open back up. So think about this. Early in the game, one of the reasons Cape Town is so very important is because the British have to sail their ships all the way down Africa to Cape Town and then into the Indian Ocean. Okay? Once this opens up, they can bring it through the Mediterranean, through the Suez Canal, down the Red Sea. I mean, I'm not saying it's like the easiest journey in the world, but it does open up another route out here. So this dotted line means this is not open. You cannot send something, at least this way, from the England base, the main British base back in England, down this way. The Allies can't use this pathway. Okay? Um, is there something else I wanted to say about that? There probably is, but I'm going to move on at this point. I could sit here and talk about maps all day and how I like maps, so it is what it is. Now, Abaddon, so I'm just going to start right up here at the north, over here at this edge of the map. Abaddon, what is going on here? Well, you may have noticed that we have. Did you ever watch that old show, Wife Swap? It's like family swap. You get a new wife for a week, and then you can. I guess the idea is you realize, how great your current wife is or something. Although sometimes that didn't happen. Anyway, the point, why am I telling this story? Because we are taking certain cargo ships here and sending them over to Aden from Abaddon. So Abaddon to Aden, we're loading fuel in all of the Abaddon ones. Again, this is another one. We're loading fuel. Now, I think Cole did this as one task force, and then I broke it up. It's the same basic idea. I think I broke it into two. He had it as one. Don't let that confuse you. It's the same idea. I think, these ships are 12, this ship's a 10. I can't remember if I did that at Aden or Abaddon, where I was just a little different than the spreadsheet. The basic idea is you're taking some of these cargo ships with fuel and taking them to Aden. Meanwhile, over at Aden, you're taking some of these ships and sending them over to Abaddon. And you may be saying, why are we doing that? Well, first of all, the ships at Aden that are going to Abaddon are not carrying anything. Okay. The reason for that is, and maybe this is another bigger picture thing that I wanted to talk about. If you think about Abaddon, Abaddon is the major port in the Persian Gulf that is going to be supplying tons, literally, of fuel. This will start just cranking fuel units. You're going to get, 100,000, 150,000, it will just keep growing and growing. And this route, this Abaddon to Karachi route, is what fuels all of the industry in India, which then creates a ton of supply when that fuel gets into this industry. Okay? So we talked about this when we set up India. There's a lot of industry out here, um, and luckily, the British had set up a rail network that stretches all the way from Karachi, and it's multiple lines here. It's a huge rail network, and it stretches all the way from Karachi all the way to Calcutta and all the way down here to Madras in the south. I mean, it's a massive rail network. And because of that, the idea here as the allied player is you're going to take every bit of fuel that you can get at Abaddon, and it's just going to show up there naturally, automatically. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to go turn oil wells on or something, or turn refineries on. Abaddon is just going to get a lot of fuel, and that fuel, for the most part, 90% of it, 85% of it maybe, you're going to send to Karachi. And once it gets to Karachi through the natural uh, processes of the game, it's going to flow down these rail lines and down all of this infrastructure to industry. And, you will even start just seeing fuel show up at Calcutta because that fuel is just going to spread out all over the country. And again, once it hits industry, it gets combined in some kind of witch's brew and becomes supply. Gets combined with resources and becomes supply. But that's the big. If Cape Town to Perth is the most important line in the game, this is the second one, at least way out here in the west. And it is, this Abaddon to Karachi. So, okay, what we were talking about is Abaddon is going to be sending on turn one fuel over to Aden. Aden, because it is blocked off from the Mediterranean, and also Yemen down here maybe doesn't, it's not going to create the fuel, the oil that is created in the Persian Gulf or over in Iran. It giving it a little fuel at the start. Now it starts pretty well here, 18,100. Okay, 12,500, not bad, right? But you'll find out very quickly, Aiden just doesn't build nearly as quickly, and you do get quite a bit of British stuff that will show up here, and so we're just putting some fuel over here because it may be needed. It's needed a heck of a lot more at Aden than it is at Abaddon. But again, 90% of the time here at Abaddon, we are going to be running to Karachi. Now you may get some really nice cargo ships that, and I think maybe we have some here, and it's okay, so this is perfect. Actually, I set this up as a continuous supply. Okay, let me finish my thought I was just about to say, is sometimes you will get cargo or tanker ships up here that have a big endurance and a pretty good speed, and sometimes you can go ahead and just run those to Perth. It makes sense to run them to Perth, maybe if you need more down there. Now, hopefully, you'll be able to have that Cape Town to Perth, get that really humming along. But, you could never have enough down in Australia. And so sometimes if a ship or two here will come along where you've got a really high endurance and a good speed. When I say good speed, better than 12, let's say, you'll go ahead and send that down to Perth and just start making that run. Now, that's a pretty long journey. Don't do it with just your normal tanker. And that was the second thought that I started to have before I just talked about the first thought, which is this tanker, the Vivi. It's 8,800 endurance, 12 speed, 6,650 capacity. This is the most generic vanilla tanker that you can have in the game, pretty much. And so what are we doing? We're just going to put this on CS Karachi. I'm just not going to micromanage this thing. It's the perfect tanker to go from Abadan to Karachi, and we're just going to let it do that all game. Now, I did get a question last time, and some of you long time players can correct me if you want, but I had this problem a couple of times in certain games that I've played where, normally, of course, all of these commands deal with what you do when you get to your destination, right? And so, if you're going to auto disband, that would happen at your destination, or unloading cargo, or retirement, or remain on state. All of those things happen at your destination. So does refuel, okay? And really, you should be able to, and I guess I generally do. Well, that's not true. I think that you should always be able to leave this on do not refuel, right? Because it's about what's happening at the destination. And we've got plenty. It's only going to take us 27 to get to Karachi, only 54. So that tells you exactly how many hexes we have between Abadan and Karachi. But it's going to only be a 54 hex round trip. Plenty. Um, And so putting this on do not refuel, I know is the proper way to do things. And I guess I've always done that. But there have been a couple of times in games that I've played where all of a sudden I'll look at a cargo ship and it's just sitting back here at Abaddon out of fuel because it's not refueling when it gets back home. So it's made this trip, well, I guess this would be exactly or almost exactly 4 times, right? It's made this trip 4 times. It gets back to Abaddon and it just sits there and doesn't refuel. The point of all of this is I don't see any downside for 2 reasons of putting these CS ships on minimal refuel. And the reason is yes, I know in some ways you're slightly defeating the purpose because why do we generally put those on do not refuel? Well, it's because it comes down here and we're taking fuel to Karachi. Why would we then want to use some of that fuel to get back to Abadan? We would much rather fuel up at Abadan, load up with fuel at Abaddon, take it to Karachi, come back and get more fuel here. You know, I mean, it's common sense, right? We're taking fuel from Abaddon to Karachi. Why would we want then use some of that fuel once we got to Karachi? That being said, by putting it on minimal, especially for a short little hop like this, the amount of fuel it could possibly use at Karachi is not much, right? So minimal refuel means it's going to be 10% more than it takes to get wherever it's going. Okay? Um, in this case, I don't know why it would ever even refuel at Karachi. Essentially, if it's working properly, it should refuel every time it gets back to Abaddon. And so having it on minimal refuel, I don't necessarily see the downside. Now, there's a second thing that goes into this, and that is what happens, and this is not a good example, Abaddon to Karachi, but let's say that you had a CS set up between, and you wouldn't do this, but for argument's sake, let's say that you had it set up between Calcutta and Rangoon, okay? Too dangerous to do. I understand that, but let's just say that you did. And it runs into a submarine here and takes off, gets over here, then it comes back, runs into a submarine task force again, takes off. Eventually, let's say it gets low on fuel, but it gets into Rangoon eventually. It sails around out here, finally gets rid of this submarine task force, and comes into Rangoon. In that case, I would much rather have my task force at least on minimal refuel because it would give that task force enough fuel to get back to Calcutta plus 10%. So I often, and again, as the allied player, you have so much fuel in many locations that it's not a huge deal. But I actually think that having these CS task forces on minimal refuel, I don't necessarily see a downside except maybe a little more fuel usage, but I do see an upside there. I just don't ever want to forget about this and have it dead in the water where it's moving one hex at a time. To me, that seems so much more detrimental than using a little extra fuel. Okay, now we've had this big theoretical discussion. If you have any thoughts on that, please put them in the comments. I'm always happy to hear when I'm wrong. Would love to hear that because I'll stop ever doing minimal refuel. But at this moment, anyway, I like to do it that way because I see the downside not being much, and I see a potential upside where you don't run the risk of having this thing go one hex at a time out of fuel out in the middle of the Indian Ocean as, being more of a benefit than the cost. Okay. Anyway, getting back to the task at hand, we've got this cargo going over to Aden. That's the one going, and another one going over to Aden. Now, remember again, so both these get fuel. I believe Cole has these together. I just split them apart. Personal it doesn't really matter. We've got this AK. Oh, the Aquana. Now, this is one of those that you may think about sending to Perth. As a matter of fact, I had it routed to Perth, despite what the spreadsheet says. And then I thought, for the first go around anyway, I'm going to have it go to Karachi because you want Karachi to get built up and get that fuel really rolling here. Now, even though this is a cargo ship with 5,800, we are loading fuel, so we'll only get 2,900 out of that. For the liquid full or liquid fill, we'll only get half. But with this endurance and a 14 speed, this is definitely a ship that you can start contemplating. Hey, when it comes back to Abaddon, do I send it to Perth? Or heck, maybe you send it over to Cape Town and then to Perth. Just something to think about. And we'll explore that later as the game gets going. Now the Athelstain. The Athelstain, 12,000 endurance, 14 speed, 8075 capacity. That's great. Nice little tanker there. We've got this going to Karachi. Again, I was gonna set this up as a CS. I held back because this is the kind of ship that could potentially go to Perth at some point if we need it to, and I just don't want to sort of forget about it. I don't want it to be on CS and I just lose track of the fact that I have a nice tanker here that could go to Perth if we need it to. There's the Vivi. Okay, there wasn't much else going on up here. It starts with a decent amount of fuel, some supply, but neither one of these things are going to be a problem. Uh, Fuel will build very quickly here. There were no planes. There is this fortress unit. Oh, I was gonna say at most of these off-map bases, you'll notice that their forts are already 9 of 9. I mean, you're talking about some of the major ports and cities in the world here. So you've got fortifications of 9 already. It's grayed out. You cannot take one to a 10. Uh, it can be a 10 in the game, but you can't take it there. You can only go to a 9. Um, yeah, we are expanding the port here, so we might as well. We've got the stuff to do it. Now, we don't have any engineer, do we? Oh, shoot. Yeah, we start with 24 engineers here. Just at the, is that at the fort? Yep, it sure is. Okay. Yeah. So at the fortress, this fortress coastal defense gives us a nice number of engineers, um, and gives us some vehicles out here too. So we're going to build that port up, and you might as well because you are going to be bringing a lot of shipping in here, but no reason to get the airfield going, or you can't do the fortifications. So over to Aden really quickly. You've got this same idea, fortress coastal defense. You'll see this at the big major cities, right? You've got 24 engineers, 4 are out at this point, and you've got some vehicles there as well. I do believe we are expanding the port. We are. Already a 7, so we can take this right up the chain. Um, no reason to do anything else. Fort's already 9. Okay. Oh, we did have the Colombo here. So light cruiser was sitting over here in what becomes Yemen. I'm not sure if it was called Yemen at this point in time. That is what it is currently, but I don't know if that was part of. I just don't know. I don't know how long Yemen has been a country. Apologies. Um, but let's just call it Aden, so I don't have to go into Yemenis history. The Colombo will be going down to, you guessed it, Colombo. We've got some other capital ships down there at Colombo too. It'll be joining up a task force down there. Not a whole lot else to say here. There's a repair shipyard, but it's small, 20 here. So, I mean, worst case, you know, really bad case scenario, you may have to send a ship to Aden to get repaired. It's possible. Oh, we've got this mishmash here. We've got the Clan Lamont, which is a nice civilian cargo ship. You've got the British Unity, a tanker, and the Yara. They're all heading over to Abaddon with nothing on them. I thought about disbanding. You know what? Sometimes I go back and forth whether I will remember something better, whether I disband it or don't disband it. Would I rather see the task force icon out there, or would I rather see when I click on Abaddon that I've got some ships in port? Well, for now, I'm not going to do anything with it. Anyway, they're going over there. We're going to set up task forces with them. They will not be together, obviously, when we do that, when they get over to Abaddon. This grouping here is another one that will disband it. We're not going to do it automatically, but we'll do it when it gets over there, and then we'll, put it in its appropriate places. We've got some things here that could potentially go to Perth, but we'll probably just send them straight into Karachi at least the first time. And that's really all that's to be said about Aden. Almost all of its shipping is going over to Abadan. Okay, so down here we come down to Mombasa. Mombasa is a pretty quiet location. Not a ton happens here. You start off with, a few things. You've got this civilian cargo ship, the Itola, and we're immediately sending it to Cape Town. Everything over here generally happens at Cape Town. And so we're going to send both of these ships down there and get them, broken up. And when I say broken up, we're not breaking up the ships themselves. We'll break up this little task force here and put them with more like-minded ships, or in the case of this armed merchant cruiser, we'll put it at the head of a task force. just so it has a little protection, even though it doesn't offer a lot. Um, these, again, are two armed merchant cruisers. Now we've stuck them together. I guess they are a little faster. Okay, sure. Um, and we're going to sail them down to Cape Town. So, okay, that is what it is. Obviously Mombasa, there's not going to be a ton going on here. Every once in a while something pops up at Mombasa, but really it doesn't create much in the way of supply or fuel. Not when compared to the other off-map bases for sure. It just doesn't have much going on. So the big crown jewel over here is Cape Town. Cape Town, obviously one of the major British bases in the world, a huge port on the southern end of Africa. And we'll see here, it is a level 7. We are going to be expanding that immediately. It does have an 80 shipyard, and don't forget about that. So if you get something messed up, and you've lost Singapore, you're having a hard time getting to Australia, you can always try to limp things over here to Cape Town where they are safe. Um, as a matter of fact, and we're going to go into this maybe at the end of this episode, maybe the start of the next one. I've been thinking and talking, on the comments and otherwise with some people about the Repulse and the Prince of Wales that are right now at Singapore, and whether we should try to get those out immediately or if we should wait and make sure the coast is clear a little bit, and is that even possible given the hellstorm that Singapore will become very shortly. But anyway, the point of that is those boats, if they do get injured, if the Repulse or the Prince of Wales, and I'm talking about this, let's just jump over here and show them really fast. Now remember, so we've got the Repulse and the Prince of Wales up here. Is it these guys? No, this is the deny. This is something I didn't look up before we started because I thought, oh, they're just sitting in port, right? Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Prince of Wales and the Repulse, we've got them over here. Two 200-point ships each. Very nice battleship and battle cruiser. Trying to decide, do we take them out of here, haul an ass, right on turn 1, or do we let our minesweepers work? Do we maybe do a little sweep for some submarine activity, give it a turn or two, get and also maybe most importantly, get a lot more ships out here as more targets for the AI to hit. So now look, they're going to lock on to these two ships the minute they leave port, okay? But if they leave port in turn 1 before some things get loaded up and get out here, they're going to be about the only thing moving, right? If you wait a couple of turns, it's possible that a lot more targets will be out here, and maybe the Japanese hit them, the AI decides to hit them, and you can kind of slip these guys out. I don't know. It's a real interesting discussion. Back to what I was originally talking about is once they do get out, fingers crossed, and if they do not sink, the best place to take them is through this strait and straight over to Cape Town. And Cape Town, whoa, where is Cape Town? There it is. And straight over to Cape Town. Cape Town's got this nice repair yard. They can come over here and sit, and you can save yourself about 400 victory points. So we'll talk more about that, about the Repulse and the Prince of Wales before this setup is over. I've been kind of going back and forth which way I want to go with it, but mm, we'll see. It's a let's play, right? It's kind of supposed to be fun. I'm not supposed to be like, look at me, I'm the ultimate admiral. So we'll see. Anyway, back to Cape Town. Now we have this RNS, South Atlantic Naval Headquarters, which is giving us naval support, which always helps. It helps for a lot of different reasons. And then again, another coastal defense gives us some engineers. The only thing we're doing is expanding the port. We've got a level 9 fort already. Airfield's already plenty fine for anything that you'll have out here. Now, you will have planes out here from time to time. Generally, we'll be picking them up and transporting them wherever the British need them. But a level 6 is plenty for any training missions that we would need to run out here. You know, if something's here for a couple of weeks before we can move it, plenty big enough. You're not going to have so many planes here that you're like, oh, God, I should have made that airfield capacity a 7. It's not going to matter like that. The port might actually really matter because, as you will see as the game goes on, we will be running a ton of ships back and forth into Cape Town. Um, okay, we mentioned the repair yard. Let's go look at these ships. Uh, this is interesting. Okay, we've got what's called the 18th Division reinforcements. Now, these folks were supposed to go to Singapore. Um, I think very wisely, the spreadsheet says, and I would also say, I should say the sensei says, um, they don't really need to go to Singapore. Now, I know a few people have mentioned in the comments they're going to try to hang on to Singapore, and I think I've said this in episodes before. Cool. I mean, send me screenshots or post them. That'd be awesome if you hang on to Singapore. I think it's maybe not the best use of resources early in the game. Although, man, if you can hold the Japanese even there an extra month or so, it would make a big difference. So cool, go for it. We're not going to be doing that. We are going to be playing what some people maybe would say is a little too ahistorical, right? We're always on that knife's edge. What is playing the game and what is being unrealistic? Now, I think it's very realistic that British Command could have sat here at Cape Town and thought, you know what? Singapore's probably going to fall. What is more important than Singapore, or what is the most important thing or place we can send these troops? And they may have landed on Rangoon. I mean, where else would they have sent them? Um, Again, they're British troops, so it's this early in the war, they're not going to send them to a Dutch base. They just would not have. I mean, to me, that's far more ahistorical than sending them to Rangoon, which at least is a British base. They would not send them to Palembang, and I know that for a lot of Allied players, that is a very popular move. Um, you can even play house rules where that's not even allowed. It's such a popular move because, Palembang much rather make that stand here than here. The Japanese are already on Malaya. They're already driving here. But to get to Palembang, first of all, you've got swamp. You've got this kind of strange, narrow port to get in here. Um, you've just got a lot of ways to defend Palembang. Now, generally, a good Japanese player will jump up here instead of trying to take it head on, and they'll come down. But look how spread out some of these bases are. So, I know it's very popular to take them to Palembang. I just don't think that that's at all realistic of any decision the British may have made. To me, it's far more realistic and really something they should have done, if you ask me, is to send these troops to Rangoon. Now, I've had people tell me, well, that really hurts the AI. Does it? I don't know. I mean, if the AI gets really hurt by you holding Rangoon strongly, then to me, that's an AI problem. It's not a user problem. And I know that one of the players on the forum, or I believe he was a developer of the original AI, and it's Andy Mack, I want to say. Is it Alan? Yes, it's Andy Mack. Um, I know he's come up with new AI scripts, and you may want to check into those. But this is just something that I've never had a problem with it. I mean, the AI fights very strongly against me at all areas, even if I'm holding on to Rangoon strongly. I've had other people say if you don't allow the AI to take Rangoon, then it's not going to be operating properly over here. I've just never seen it. So anyway, we've had a huge theoretical discussion there. The point of this is these guys in the 54th British Brigade, the 53rd, the 55th, they are going to go to Adu first, okay? we're going to let them sit there and they're going to meet up with some other transports and some just a bigger task force. And then we're going to kind of reapportion them. Then they're going to Rangoon. Okay. Now we've set the home port of this as Colombo. Because they'll probably hop there first and then on to Rangoon. But the ultimate plans for these troops, the ultimate plan, I say plans, it's one plan, is to go to Rangoon. Okay, I better get moving here. We are at 45 minutes and we're only over here to Cape Town. I had all kinds of discussions today. Cargo Perth, this is what you'll be seeing. This is your Cape Town to Perth Ulta run right here. Good endurance, average speed, big capacity. They are, but the only difference is they're loading fuel. That's why I didn't make it a CS. Um, because they're loading fuel this time, you may switch that back and forth depending on what's going on. Of course, you almost always prefer sending fuel to Perth because that's, it goes to Perth, it goes down the rail lines, it goes to the Australian industry, then it creates supply. But sometimes you may want to make one of these passes where it loads up. I mean, this is, obviously 25, almost 26,000 supply units if it takes it. As is, we're running 12,800 fuel. Do the math whenever it comes back here next time, and maybe you want to do something different. Uh, what do we have here? Cape Town cargo due. Why did I set this? Set destination. Weird. Did I make a mistake? I wouldn't believe that. All right, I think that needs to go to a due. I'll go back and check that. No need to say in the comments, you fool, that's not where it's going. But I put it as cargo. Oh, I think I know what's going on here. Cancel load supplies. Nah, that's fine. We'll have it load up supplies, go to a due. It's eventually going to go back to Cochin as its home. Then you see these are the little jump uh, supplies, Cape Town to Diego Garcia. And then this is another one that is going to North Mail, so we had to make it amphibious. North Mail does not have a port that can take this. Then it's going to set its home port to Cochin. Let's put this as cargo, North Mail. So when it gets to Cochin, we know that this is one of those little supply jumps that we do to get these smaller bases. Okay, so that's Cape Town. Let's move over to, we'll just very quickly mention that Port Stanley exists down here, and that's about all it does. Not much happens at Port Stanley, that is for sure. Now, up to the Panama Canal and these two United States bases, we don't have much here right at the start. Now, we have the Trenton. The Trenton's going to go over to Pago Pago. It's essentially lending a bit of AA support right off the top. In case the Japanese get any funny ideas. It's not much. I mean, it's 85. It's okay. It's not terrible. It's better than nothing. So it's going to go over there, provide a little AA support. It's also got a couple of float planes. You know, they're not they don't have much in range, but they can look around a bit. You need some of that, so it's going to give you a little recon. That's Balboa. Now I'll tell you, Cristobal is kind of your center of operations here in the canal. Balboa does not have as much stuff. Cristobal is a 4-4. Balboa is a 3, already built past a 1-4. Um, but Cristobal gets automatic supply and fuel that hits it every turn. That's to just kind of simulate the fact that obviously the United States was going to be pumping that full of fuel and supply, and you can't really model all the cargo ships that would take. Now, that came up in the comments last time because I had mentioned that there's a task force that I was going to send up to the eastern US that I would have come down to Cristobal, in kind of a continuous supply. And it was pointed out Cristobal automatically gets fuel and supply every turn. That being said, I still like to pump even more in here. Uh, you've got plenty of cargo ships. Now, you don't have a ton of transport ships or tankers, but you've got a lot of cargo ships. as the allies, even at the start. And so some of those, and as we get up to the eastern US, we'll talk about it. A lot of players, a lot of allied players like to go eastern US to Cape Town. You may say, huh? Well, that seems like a long way. Well, it's only a long way on this map, right? If you think about it, let's just say this is New York. It's, who knows where it's supposed to be. It's eastern US. It's all of the eastern seaboard, right? But that to Cape Town is a really pretty modest trip in the grand scheme of things, right? I mean, I guess the point I'm making is just because Cape Town, the way this game is mapped, since it's not around a globe, don't get confused thinking Cape Town is the furthest thing away from the eastern US. It is certainly not. And a lot of players won't even mess around with this Australian run that we'll be doing. So this, they don't even mess around with that. They go eastern US to Cape Town and then Cape Town to Perth, which we will be doing some of. I don't rely on it as my main pathway that way. Um, but you can also run eastern US to Cristobal, and we will be doing that as well. You also will have troops moving through here. Now, the movement through here is kind of weird. You have to essentially stop at one of the two places, okay? So you can either, if you're coming from this way, you can either put this as your destination or you can put this as your destination. It will automatically move through here, I guess is what I'm saying, even though you can't see the canal. It those ships will move. I don't think there's any ship that's well. I don't want to say that for sure. I've never taken like an aircraft carrier through the canal. Um, I don't know. That's a good question. Like I say, every time I make one of these episodes, I think of something new. But these will become very important. They're just not that important right at the start. We have a base force, and we have the Trenton sailing to Pago. That's it. These become supply. Oh, I will say early in the game as the ally player, I think about on turn 20, something like that, 15 maybe, you get a ton of U.S. destroyers show up here, and it's really nice. They have radar, and it's very nice to get those finally because you're really deficient when it comes to ASW at the start. And so you will be getting a bunch of destroyers just show up here. And you get other things that show up here. You should check it every turn. You never quite know what might be at Panama unless you actually look at your reinforcement table. Up the scale here to the eastern US. Now, eastern US, 100,000 supply, 87,000 fuel. Basically, it's going to have this all the time, all the time. You're always going to be able to run supply and fuel out of here. I've already mentioned you can take those to Cape Town, or you can take them down to the Panama Canal, or ship stuff by rail down this way when it comes to troops, planes, and whatnot. But a lot of people take a lot of the supply and a lot of this fuel and run it over to Cape Town. Now, what's going on mainly in the eastern U.S.? You're training a lot of pilots. Um, You've got P-38 Lightnings out here. Now remember, the fourth U.S. fighter and fourth U.S. bomber do not move out of the U.S., okay? But the fifth U.S. fighter and bomber does. So most everything that was fifth, we have railed either to Seattle, San Diego, or I think maybe LA in some cases, but there are a lot of them headed that way that we've transferred base. Um, we've we've transferred them from the eastern U.S. out to those western outposts of Seattle, San Diego, LA, and then we're going to throw them on ships and take them out to the Pacific. As a matter of fact, let's just roll over there and look at that really quickly. Um, they're going to be going by rail, so I don't think they're here yet, actually. But I did want to find a fifth US. Yeah, I mean, obviously, those planes wouldn't be out here yet because it's going to take 2 days by rail, which isn't too bad when you think about it. Man, we put planes on railroad, and 2 days later they come out in Seattle. That's not too bad. But anyway, we've done that with a lot that are assigned to the fifth. Oh, I'm still in Seattle. Sorry. Back here to the eastern U.S. So what do we have here? We have, two fighters, one bomber that's a bolo. We do have 20 P-38 Lightnings. Great, great training squadron here, right? And we might as well let them train back here in the east. There's no downside to it, right? Um, we've got huge airfield, 10, right? We've got 10 and 10 here, airfield and port. Might as well train as many pilots back here as we can. It doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't take up room other places. Here's another 12 P-38s. You've got some more bolos, so you've just got a hodgepodge here, but you will start seeing all kinds. It's another base you need to check every turn because things show up here all of the time. And you also really need to decide what you're going to do with the supply going out. Do you want it to go to Cape Town? Do you want it to go down through the canal? Um, you know, we'll do it through the Let's Play. Canada, what's going on in Canada? Not much. No offense to you Canadians, but not much is happening in Canada. We've got two planes up here. Why am I not training these guys? Let's pop that up to 100. I think I just forgot to do that. Escorts, yeah, they're fighters. The Kitty Hawk, 10. I did set the range to 0. I don't know why I didn't hit train to 100. So they're going to be training. Of course, you have a 50 repair shipyard. Down here at the eastern US, I should have mentioned that, you have a 300 repair shipyard. So if you need some spare shipyard capacity, you can send things over here to the eastern US. But Canada, again, it's got 100,000 supply, 87,000 fuel. Uh, what are you really going to do with it? You can run some cargo out, but mainly it's going to just be flowing through Canada out here to Vancouver and other places. UK, nothing going on there. They really don't want you doing much with the UK. I mean, I guess you can run some cargo out of there, uh, and we'll be doing certain things. I don't mean to say like it doesn't matter. It does, but really, really, the base that matters over here is the Eastern U.S. base because you can run that Cape Town junket over and over. So I think that really does it for off-map bases. As usual, if you have any questions at all, you disagree with me, or hey, I've posed several questions in this episode, and if you have the answers, I would always like to hear them. Uh, put them down in the comments. That would be great. So as always, for Strategy Gaming Dojo, I do appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you haven't subscribed, give me a subscribe or a thumbs up or leave a comment. Do something, get active. I would appreciate it. So I'll talk to you next time.